Good morning and namaste to all of you. Let's start our Saturday class with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Asto ma satgamya, tamso ma jyotirgamya, mrityor ma amritam gamya. Om sena bhavatu, sena bhunatu, se viryam karvavahi, tejasvinav dhitamastu, ma vidvishavahi. Om shanti, shanti, shanti. Om. Today's class is about Vivekachudamani. And Shankaracharya ji has been telling us the characteristics of a Jivan Mukta person in detail. So now he is re-emphasizing the thoughts of that in the next verse also. It's a verse number 443, or maybe in your books it's 442. Okay. And the reason for that is why they change a difference in the verse number. Because there are certain verses, they have been combined by certain authors. That's why. Okay. So, but look at it. It starts with Vigyat. So that way you will know that where we are. Vigyat Brahma Tatvasya Yaya Purvam Na Samsriti Asti Cha En Sa Vigyat Brahmbhavaha Bahirmukha. Vigyat Brahm Tatvasya, for him who has realized the existence of Brahma. So it's not just only known, but it's realized, experienced. Yatha Purvam, as before, na means not, samsriti, reaching out for the sense objects, going towards this sansar. Asti means there is. Sa means he, cha means and. Vigyat Brahma Bhavaha, one who has realized Brahma. Bahirmukha, his senses still have not, they are still like outgoing tendency. So in one line, he is telling us a person who has realized Brahma. In the second line, a person who has not. So for him who has realized the essence of Brahma, there's no reaching out for sense objects as before. So it's almost like before he realized, maybe he was looking outside, but now he has realized there's no more going out. Bahirmukhi. But if there is, then he has not realized Brahma, his senses still have an outgoing tendency. Okay. So for one who has experienced the reality, there's no sansar. Sansar is the phenomena of going and coming, of repeated births and deaths. That's what it really means. Why do we take birth? Because we had certain desires. That's why we are in this sansar. Entering sansar is possible only when the mind is turned outward. Otherwise, there was no reason to come here. So when the mind is turned outward, reality cannot be experienced. Mind and intellect, that's like a part of our subtle body. They turn towards objects or emotions or thoughts only when there are vasanas. If there are no vasanas, the mind and intellect will be submerged into the Brahma. So one who has realized Brahma has no vasanas. And vasanas are what? The very subtle impressions. So in case the seeker is tempted to run after the ever-changing sense objects, it is very clear. It's a very clear indication that a seeker has not realized the self fully. And this is not to judge somebody, this is to judge ourselves. Am I still tempted in this outer world? Or am I satisfied within myself, by myself? There's a more and more tendency to stay put and enjoy the bliss within. That means the movement of this progress is happening. So in other words, extrovertedness, which is a bahirmukhi pravaha, is the sign of ignorance. That means avidya is there. Because avidya is the root cause of all this. Because of avidya, we are here. Because of the ignorance, we don't know who we are. We are here. So extrovertedness is the sign of ignorance still. Next one. Prachin vasana veg adi samsrititi chet na sad ek tva vigyanam andhi bhavati vasana. Prachin vasana vegat. Because of the momentum of the past vasanas. Vasana veg. It's like a flow of that. So because of the momentum of past vasanas, past impressions, past tendencies, asau. Asau means this person. Asau. Samsaratihi. Attachment for sense objects. Or still attachment for the sense objects. Chet means if it is asserted. Na means not. Sad ek tvo vigyanam. Sad ek tva vigyan. That means when there is a realization of oneness of Brahma. Sad ek. Vigyan means realization over here. So when there is a realization of oneness with the Brahma, there's no difference between me and the Brahma. That Brahma is everywhere. Mandi. Mandi means weakened. So those impressions have become weakened. Bhavati becomes vasana, any vasanas, any impressions. So if it is asserted that still there is attachment for sense objects, because of the momentum of the past vasanas, the reply is no. For the vasanas get weakened when there is a realization of oneness with the Brahma. On the realization, the vasanas become weak, mandi, and are not able to manifest and produce any activity. That is the effect of the realization. They become roasted seeds. Otherwise, any kind of a seeds, they will sprout. But the roasted seeds cannot sprout. And this realization is that all these seeds, all the impressions, they have been roasted. Roasted seeds, they look like seeds, but they will not sprout even under extremely favorable condition. So the moment of enlightenment reduces the old vasanas to impotency. They become impotent. That is the effect of the realization. We have seen in our religious books, even a person who seems like a greatest sinner, before the realization, after the realization becomes a saint. No more vasanas. Because this experience is so extraordinary, it is so unique that you start seeing, experiencing self everywhere. And to reinforce this argument with a striking illustration, the next verse. Atyant kamuk asyapi vritti kunthati matre tathaiva brahmane gyate purna anande manishinaha. Atyant kamuk asyapi. It's like a kam means the lust. Even a downright lustful person. Atyant kamuk asyapi. Vritti. Vritti is the propensities. Kunthati, get checked. It's like a kuntha, dullness. Matri, before his mother. Tatha means also. Ev means indeed. Brahmani, when Brahma, Gyate is realized. It's like a steady illumination of Brahma. Puran Anandehe, the bliss absolute. Manishina, the wise. The propensities of even a downright lustful person are checked in the presence of his mother. This is the example he's giving us. So too, there are no more any worldly propensities in one who has realized the knowledge of Brahma, the bliss absolute. So in other words, even the mind of a person who is extreme lustful will restrain himself before his mother. And this is the case for those yogis, Jivan Mukts, who are immersed in the bliss absolute. Because all they see is bliss, God's bliss, Anand. And they are fully merged in that Brahma Anand. So the vasana of a man of realization can never express itself. So that's why Shankaracharya ji is giving us this very profound example. Very profound. If you have tested this bliss of infinite of Brahma, you will always have this experience, the presence of this experience in you. It is so powerful. Even if the vasanas are there, they will not manifest. A sadhak trying to lead a noble way of life should always keep mentally the presence of his ideal, his teacher before him. So we are not realized yet, but we are the sadhaks. So if we keep the image of God or our Guru in our mind, our baser tendencies, they get weaker. Because we always feel inspired to live the ideal way of life. That helps us to stay on the path. Okay, this is what we learn from here. Just like we tell our children, grandchildren, remember what kind of a family you have come from. You don't want to deviate away from those values of the family. The same way we are the children of God. We have to keep that godly image in our mind. Do not deviate away. Do not sink into these temptations. Okay. Let's look at next verse. Nidhi dhyasan shilasye pahe pratye ikshate brviti shruti etasye prarabdham phal darshanat. Now he's going to, in next few verses, talk about the prarabdha. Prarabdha is that part of the karmas which we have brought with us right now in our human life. Prarabdha karma. From the storehouse, we are given a handful, and this is what we are reaping the fruits of. That's a prarabdha. No, nidhi dhyasan shilasya hai. For his who is an adept at meditation. So nidhi dhyasan is like a constant meditation. So shilasya means who is practicing it. Bahe pratya means external perception. Ikshyate is a seen. Braviti says. Shruti. Shruti means the Vedas. Shruti. The primary scriptures are Shrutis. Prarabdham, accumulated past actions. The results of the previous activities to be exhausted in this birth. That is Prarabdha. Phal darshanat. Since actual results are seen, Phal darshanat. He who is an adept at meditation, a serious meditator, is yet seen to have external perceptions. Shruti says, this is Prarabdha at work. This can be inferred from actual results seen. Because earlier in the two verses, it was said that a man of perfection, the vasanas created by his past actions, cannot be powerful promptings. How is it that such an individual is seen to have his experiences in that world? We see that such kind of a yogi still has some transactions in the world around him. This yogi still eats, still sleeps, walks, talks, enjoys a cool bath in summer and warm in the winter. If he doesn't have any vasanas, how does it happen? How does a yogi live? Shankaracharya is saying he continues to exist because of his vasanas. Prarabdha karam. It's not a new vasanas. His mind and intellect is still attached to Brahma, but his body keeps on functioning. So he's trying to answer this question which often comes to our mind. He is constantly practicing meditation, We see this person still having outer perceptions and experiences. Sometimes we see these great yogis and the gurus getting sick also. We see them going through ups and downs of life also. That is a result of the Pràrabdha. They are not accumulating any new karmas, but because of the Pràrabdha, they are just going through it. Okay? They understand that they are the witness. But Pràrabdha is working in this lifetime. It's like a quota of joys and the sorrows we have brought with us. But a person who is not realized will create more karmas because of this Pràrabdha. But these yogis, they are not creating new karmas. They are just extinguishing the old ones. Next one. Sukh adye anubhavo yavat evat prarabdha ishyate falodya kriya purvo nishkriyo nahi kutrachit. Sukh adi anubhava, the experience of happiness, etc. Yavat, as long as Pràrabdha, the work of Pràrabdha, and Tavat, before Pràrabdha there's a word Tavat. Tavat means so long. Tavat. Ishyate is seen to persist. Ishyate. Falodaya, appearance of result. Fal uday. Uday means appearance, rising. Kriya purvaha, have a preceding action. Purv means preceding. Nishkriya, independent of action. Na means not. He means indeed. Kutra chit, anywhere. As long as there is the experience of happiness, etc., the work of Pràrabdha is seen to persist. Every result is seen to have a preceding action. Okay, so that means there is a cause for everything. So every result is seen to have a preceding action. There can be no result independent of action. And why is this? Why the Upanishads indicate that the man of perfection gains the experience of nothing that is not the expression of his Pràrabdha? So this is what Shankaracharya ji is explaining. As long as there is perception of happiness, etc., that means happiness, sorrow, etc., the Vedas, they acknowledge that Pràrabdha exists. And the logical reason for this is that without a cause, an effect is impossible. Okay, so they go hand in hand. If all prarabdhas end at the moment of realization, there won't be any experience of joy or sorrow. And we see the realized person also experiencing joy and sorrow. So that really means there must be a previous cause for these experiences. So every result is preceded by an action, and nowhere is a result seen accruing independently of action. So naturally, the conclusion is that when there are experiences of joy and sorrow, for the wise person, they must have a reason from his own past actions. And this is what Vedas declare, Shankaracharya ji is saying. Aham Brahm iti Vigyanat Kalapkoti Shat Architam Sanchitam Vilyam Yantim Prabodhat Swapan Karamvat. Aham. Aham is I am. Aham. Brahm iti. Brahm iti means das. So that really means Brahm alone. Aham Brahm iti. Vigyanat, with the realization. Kalap koti shat arjitam, earned in 100 crore cycles. So that means actions accumulated through hundreds of millions of cycles of eons. So long time. Sanchitam, the accumulated result of actions. Sanchitam. William means destroyed or negated. Vile. Yati means get. For bodhat, on waking up. Swapan karamavat, like the actions in the dream. He says, I am Brahma. With the realization, the actions of 100 crore cycles come to naught. That means they dissolve. Like the actions in the dream on waking up. Okay, so they get destroyed. So this idea is emphasized here is that total destruction of all vasanas from the past, from the sanchit. It just goes away when we have realized I am Brahma. So the sanchit karam, they get dissolved. The prarabdha karam, because you are born with it right now, you still have those, but the sanchit get dissolved. And the kriyaman, the new karam, sure, you are a non-doer. So this is the point he's trying to make over here. No more the vasanas get accumulated. And the vasanas which were accumulated in millions and millions of lifetimes, they get burned out too with this realization. So the accumulated vasanas, the sanchit, they get completely destroyed. And Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita said the same thing. With this fire of knowledge, he called it a fire of knowledge, Gyan Agni. It's almost like even outer fire, no matter what kind of a wood we put in there, it becomes ashes. So the result of the activities done in a dream. So this is the example he's giving us in this Swapana Karamvat. In a dream, I might have done good actions or bad actions. When I wake up, there's no result of that. Because waking up itself, I have woken up from the dream, and all the actions which were accumulated in the dream, they get all destroyed. We all have studied Mundak Upanishad also in the past. Over there, the Rishi is crying out with the same message. He says, Bhedyate Hriday Grinthi Chidante Sarva Sanshaya Kshiyante Cha Asya Karmane Tasmin Na Drishte Paravare. So Rishi is saying that all the vasanas of the man of perfection are completely fried in the fire of knowledge. So in short, the man of perfection or a realized person or a yogi, whatever you want to call, has to live no more the effects of his past actions. Then in the next verse he says, Yat kritam swapan velayam punyam va papam ulbashnam suptoho utitasye kintum tasye swargai narkai va. Yat means whatever. Kritam means is done. Yat kritam. Swapan vela yam, at the time of dream. Punyam, meritorious act. Va means or. Papam, sinful deed. Ulbanam, that means abundant or intense. Ulbanam. Supta uttithasya, for him the awakened. Uttitha, awakened. Kintuhu. It's like this is a word, kim and tat. Kim means what, tat means that. Okay. Swargai, heaven, narkai, hell. Sayat means would it be? Okay. Tasya swargai, narkai, va means or. So can the meritorious acts or sinful deeds that a man has imagined doing in a dream take him to heaven or hell when he's awakened? So he's putting a question to us. Question. So a person who is sleeping, dreaming, when he wakes up, what really happens? So whatever activities have been done during the dream state of consciousness, irrespective of their merits and demerits, cannot have any reaction if the individual has waken up. Okay. So between the two states of consciousness, there cannot be any transaction. The subjects that experience the two state of consciousness, totally different. That means the waker, as the waker is not available in the dream, and the dreamer, as the dreamer is not there to experience the waking. Two different levels of consciousness. So in the same way, he's saying that the egocentric individual must have performed countless actions from one form to the other. But now the ego has been dissolved. No more ego. Ego has been totally villain. So none of these fruits of actions, the karam phal, can ever affect him. Because the doer of those actions is not available anymore. Actions are done by the Prakriti, not by the Atma. And this person has realized, I am the Atma. Swam sangam udasinam parigyaye nabho yatha na shilashyati cha yati kanchit kadachit bhavik karmavi. Swam. Swam means one's own self. Asangam, unattached. Udasinam, indifferent. Parigyaye, very well realizing. Parigyaye. Nabho is the sky. Yatha means just as. Na means not. Shilashyati is concerned. Ja means and. Kaschit. Kaschit means anyone. So yat kaschit kadachit bhavi karma bhi. Together it means about the actions of any type or any time yet to be performed. So yat kinchit kadachit bhavi karma bhi. So being unattached and indifferent like sky, one who is realized is never concerned in the least about actions yet to be performed. So over here, Shankaracharya ji is emphasizing that the vasanas accumulated in the past are destroyed. Not only that, but as a result of the realization, all the vasanas that are to mature in the future and yield their results in terms of joy and sorrow, it's like agami karma, are also totally destroyed. That's what he's saying. Yat kinchit kadachit bhavik karma. So on realizing the self which is unattached and indifferent, udasin, to the activities which are taking place around, the yogi has so completely annihilated than even the immature vasanas. The vasanas which were waiting for expression. So it's like even the wet wood, sooner or later with the heat of the fire, catches a fire and becomes ash. This is what he means over here. Newly kindled by the seeker's realization. We all know the Atma, unattached and actionless. We saw that in the previous verses he has been telling us. This is what Atma is. Atma is described as indifferent, udasin. That really means that its presence, all the activities are taken place, but it's not involved in any of the activities, whether they are pap karam or punya karam. It's not involved in it. So in its presence, activities do take place, but Atma never gets involved in it. So when a man of realization acts, he's not affected at all at any time. Yat kinchit kadachit. By the vasanas yet to mature in the future, which is agami. This is also called a bhavi karama. Bhavi karam. Actions that are yet to yield their fruits in the future period. Bhavi karam. In short, you can understand that karam is done by the ego, and the ego alone can get its reward or punishment. When the doer of the actions, this vain ego has been totally sublimated, who is to receive the results? When the ego is no more, the results of the karma done by the ego cannot take effect and therefore no agami can function. Okay, so this term ego we have to understand properly. Ego is always it's like a sense of identification. Ego is whenever I identify myself other than the soul, the Atma, that's the ego. It could be body, it could be intellect, it could be accumulation which I have done. That's all ego. So when you have annihilated the ego, what is left? Only the Brahman. This is what he's trying to tell us. So the karmas that have taken effect already, for the experience of which the man of realization has taken this embodiment, that is called Pràrabdha, will continue to function. Because sometimes we wonder, how can this kind of a person talks and walks and lives? That is because of the Pràrabdha. Pràrabdha. And he will elaborate on it in the next verse also. Let me just quickly go through it, and then we'll talk more about it in our discussion, and maybe next week also. Na nabho ghat yogen sura gandhen lipyate tatha atmupadhi yogena tad dharma na eva lipyate. Nabh is the sky. Na means not. Ghat yogen, because of the contact with the jar. Ghat means a jar or a jug. Sura gandhen, by the smell of the liquor in it. So any kind of a liquid in it. Sura means actually the liquor, the alcohol. Na lipyate, not affected. Tatha means so too. Atma, the self. Na eva, not at all. Last word is lipyate, is affected. Upadhi yogen, because of its contact with the upadhis, the conditionings, upadhis. Tad dharme, with regard to the properties or conditionings, tad dharme. So the space, because of its contact with the jar, is not affected by the smell of the liquor in it. So too the Atma is not affected by the properties, the conditionings, because of its contact with them. We know that all our karams, all our activities are called karam. And karams are three kinds: past, present, and future. That's how we refer to them. Sanchit is the acquired, it's like a something, the storehouse of the karmas. The large number of vasanas there are within our sanchit karam. But just a few of them, we pick them up as a prarabdha karam. Who decided? Personally, we cannot decide it. Otherwise, we'll all will like to have the good karmas. It's a law of karma that decides it. And who set up this law? The lawmaker. That's the God. That's why we say that God is the one who gives our destiny to us. We created it, but then according to this law of karma, we reap it. And agami karma, they are yet to come. The future karam, they are also called kriyaman karam. The sanchit which are acquired in the past and the agami which is yet to come, both are destroyed at the moment of realization. Remember that. They can no longer affect the individual because he has transcended his little identification and has experienced the bliss beyond. So in order to explain this whole karmic thing, Shankaracharya ji is giving us this example. Like a space is present everywhere. This Akash is everywhere. That Tattva Akash is talking about. The contents in space can never contaminate it. Because of the contents of the space, they are at the grosser level. Grosser cannot have the effect on the subtle. A dirty part may contaminate the surroundings atmosphere, the air, but not the space. See, air is still grosser than the space. And Atma, which we are, is even subtler than the space. But he is giving us the example of a space because this we can at least comprehend. So even though a realized person lives in the body cannot condition him. Because we see these gurus living in the body, but body is not condition, cannot condition them. At all time, his consciousness, or he is conscious of his oneness with the Brahman, with the infinite. Because he understands he's subtler than even the subtlest of this. He cannot be, see, vasanas are subtle, but Atma is subtler than the vasanas, so cannot get conditioned by it. But this body being Pràrabdha, that which is the result of the past actions, already started yielding the fruits, continue to exist, even in a Jivan Mukta person. And we'll see next week how he's giving us more examples so that we can understand this also. But right now, he's just giving us an example of the Akash Tattva. Akash Tattva cannot get contaminated. Air can, Akash can't. The space Tattva cannot. So let's stop it here and then we'll start with the next verse next week. Om Purnamada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.